Hey everybody, this is Everyday Commentary, and this is the fourth version of this video. This will be hopefully the second one that I post. This is a video overview of this knife, the Fallkniven U2, and the Fallkniven U2 is a small pocket knife. It is a true pocket knife. It has no pocket clip. The handle scales are made out of a mildly textured Zytel. And the blade is a drop point blade, and it is a not a Damascus, but a laminated blade. And you can see right there, there's the lamination line. The sandwich, the bread of the sandwich is 420 stainless steel, and the interior, the meat of the sandwich, is a steel known as SG2, which is a Takifu steel. It is also known in the literature that Fallkniven puts out as super gold powder steel, so SGPS. This is a lockback knife. That was one of the things I screwed up last time. And it opens with an ambidextrous nail nick. There's one there, and there's one there. You can open the knife relatively easily with two hands. However, it is virtually impossible to open the knife with one hand. The knife came incredibly sharp out of the box. There's no knife that I have ever had that was sharper out of the box. That's my heater, sorry. And the knife itself was it's a stainless steel. The SG2 is a stainless steel, and it is finished to a satin, maybe a high satin finish, low mirror gloss or low mirror finish, and it looks nice, but as you can see, it attracts quite a few fingerprints. Let me see if I can clean it off a little bit. It just looks like garbage. There we go. We got a little bit of the fingerprints off. Not a lot. Let's see if I can refocus it here. Right there. And the knife is an excellent pocket knife. It weighs about 1.5 ounces. The Zytel has no liners. And that means that the pivot is a little rough, especially for a knife of this level of fit and finish. The Zytel liners or the Zytel handle is actually two handles, and even though you can't see the seam, there is one, and you can probably see it right there. There's the seam. I put on it Edge Observer's gradient lanyard bead that he gave me. Just a pretty simple lanyard. I don't know how to tie any fancy lanyards. I know how to tie one, the one that comes with the Chris Reeve knives, but I didn't bother. The one thing that I do like about this in terms of the knife is not only is the steel nice, but it's a really simple knife. It's an elegant knife. It has very few parts to it. There's no pins. That's actually the pivot for the lock bar. And then this is the main pivot. And unlike a lot of these simple knives, these simple like pure pocket knives, this one has an adjustable pivot, and it's something that I really, really like. There is a smidgen of side-to-side blade play, which you can easily get out of a lockback by adjusting the pivot, which I haven't done. The pivot is a Torx pivot. It's a pretty large Torx bit, as you can see there. One of the other things I really like about the knife is the blade shape. The blade shape is really, really simple. It's perfect drop point blade shape. It just works really well. I did a little bit of cutting with it earlier today, and then yesterday, I was able to cut, I mean, this is the sharpest blade out of box I've ever seen. I was able to cut free-hanging toilet paper, just poke it and pulled it down. I was able to cut it as opposed to tear it. In addition to that, I cut open a couple of packages, a couple of clamshells. I never opened a clamshell this easy. I basically just punctured the clamshell and then with virtually no force at all ran the blade around the edge and it just popped off. The clamshell was cut so cleanly that I could have just put it right back in place and it would have had no problem. There's the Fallkniven mark established in whatever date that is, and then the model number, which is U2. They have no tank stamp for the steel, which is unusual. But overall, I really like the knife. There's a large lanyard hole in the rear, and then there's these two gentle scallops here for your fingers. It's a 3-finger knife. It's not really a 4-finger knife. If you had a more substantial lanyard, like a box knot, that would work really well here to give you an extra bit of grip. Overall, I really like the package. It's very thin. The handles have a nice convex bevel to them, so you can really get in there and use them, as opposed to a lot of the knives that have these flat handle slabs that don't do anything for grip. I mean, they just do nothing at all for grip. The texturing is not too bad. It's very, very mild. But overall, I like the knife. Here are a couple knives that I think it compares very favorably to. The first knife is the Almar Hawk. Now, the Almar Hawk is a little different in that this is the ultralight model, in that it has a micarta handle scale, but it is also lockback, and this one happens to have a thumb stud. Now, this knife carries Aus 8 steel, which is a decent steel. I mean, it's not the best steel in the world. I do use it, so you can see there that it has some tape marks on it and stuff like that. But the fit and finish on the Almar knife is better than the fit and finish on the Fallkniven. Here's one way you can test. In lockback, there's a portion of the lockback where the lock and the blade tang meet. And look at it on the Almar first. Oh wait, you can't see it. It looks like one solid piece of steel, right? And you take it, you can see it there when I push the lock bar down. But there, it almost disappears. On the Fallkniven, it requires no aid to see. You can see it, it's right there. And then if I push down, it becomes even more pronounced. So, overall, I think that the Almar is a nicer knife. It's a better finish. But there are two things that I don't like about the Almar as much as I like about the Fallkniven. First, the handle scale on the Fallkniven, it really fills up your hand. It's wide enough that you feel like you have a pretty substantial grip. Here, if you notice, the grip is relatively spindly. There's more of a pronounced curve here, so it gives you a place for your finger to rest. But the other thing that I like about the Fallkniven over the Almar is that the Fallkniven has an adjustable pivot point, whereas the Almar does not. This is all pin construction, even the pivot's pinned. I think that the blade shapes are roughly equal. One's a drop point, one's a spear point. The steel on the Fallkniven is considerably better. I mean, it will hold an edge almost forever. The SG2 SGPS is usually compared to ZDP 189, so it's a much harder steel than the relatively soft Aus 8. That being said, I've gotten really good performance out of the Almar's Aus 8. I mean, it's a really nice, super thin grind. I mean, both of these knives are ultra thin, as you can see there. And so I've done pretty well with this knife, and it doesn't really bother me. Like all lockbacks, there's a little bit of blade play in the Almar too. The other knife that I thought this compared favorably to was this knife, the knife that I had the lanyard on before I put it on the Fallkniven U2, and it's the Strider PTCC. Now this is just a different sized knife in terms of the blade thickness. I mean, you can see there it's like twice as thick. But in the hand, it's very similar. It's very similar in size, very similar in shape. The blade shape is, you've got all these like Strider thingies going on here with the blade shapes. But, if you take away all of the Strider flourishes, you have basically either a drop point here or a spear point here, but the difference between the two isn't that great. You can also see that the knives are relatively similar in size. The Strider and the Fallkniven. The Strider is considerably taller, but the Fallkniven and the Strider are basically the same size. I like the Strider in the hand considerably better. I think that the curve is a little more pronounced, and then I do like the two-finger try. I mean, this is a full four-finger knife. This is one of my favorite knives, and that's why. It also doesn't have a pocket clip, just like the Fallkniven, and I think that this knife is probably better for it. The one thing that I would note is that the pivot point on the Strider is, of course, this obscene and obvious money-grabbing, stupid proprietary pivot point, which is annoying and does come loose every once in a while. And I would also note that the grind on the Strider, I mean, this is a thicker blade, I get that, but the grind on the Strider, and I mean that in this case, in particular, it's the very thin secondary grind. I mean, if you look at it there, like that's it. It's a very thin line. And then the one here is much wider. It's probably twice as wide. It's hard to tell in camera, but see if I can get it to work. There we go. Yeah, so it's like twice as wide. And that makes this knife a better cutter. I mean, this is a much better cutting knife than this is. This knife has a tendency to glance off material, especially wood, when you're taking really, really fine angled cuts. And this knife glances off nothing. I mean, it's one of the most aggressive cutters I've ever seen. So overall, I really do like the Fallkniven U2. It stacks up favorably with knives that are much more expensive. I mean, I think this is like a mid-70s knife, mid-$70 knife at Blade HQ. And this is the Blade HQ review sample. The review will be up in the new year. But I wanted to make a couple of corrections. I said that this is a liner lock, and obviously it's not. And I said that it could only be opened one-handed, and that's obviously not true. This is a two-handed knife, and it's a lockback. It'll get some more pocket time before I put up the review, and right now it's being paired with this light. So I think quite highly of this light. So if it's getting paired with that, I think quite highly of the knife as well. So that's the overview of the Fallkniven U2. Look for the written review shortly. Thank you very much.